It is absolutely critical, okay? So let's look at the next verse. So very early, Jesus gets up, solitary place. Then it says this, verse 36. I love this. Simon, that's Peter, and his buddies, his companions, went to look for him. Isn't this just real life? I finally got some peace and quiet. I finally got away. And when they found Jesus, they exclaimed, everyone's looking for you, right? So if you are a mom to young children, you know exactly what this is like. You just need like 3 minutes. So you go into the only place where you can find solitude, the bathroom, right? You don't even need to use a bathroom. You just go into the bathroom. You trick your kids. You're lying to them. It's okay. It's for a good purpose, your sanity. And so you go in there, and 3 minutes later, or you hear, Mommy, right? And moms, you know what I'm talking about, right? There's no place to run or whatever. So you're like, okay, Joel, what's your advice to hang on for dear life until that season passes? That's my advice to you. It's just hard, right? But I love how real this is. Jesus is busy. He's in high demand. He's wanted. He's needed. But he has to make time to get away. In fact, he does this frequently. In Luke 5, we read about him often withdrawing to be with the Lord. The 6th century Syrian monk said this: the friend of silence draws near to God. I love that. The friend. What if silence became a friend instead of an enemy? Second practice is the practice of Sabbath. Okay? When God establishes people, he said, okay, I'm going to help you by creating margin in your life. And so 1 out of every 7 days during the week, 1 day a week, you need a time to rest. The word Sabbath literally means to stop. And it's interesting because it's a verb, it's active, and what's the action? To stop, right? That's Sabbath. So Sabbath is a day to stop working, stop worrying, stop, let's add another W, wanting, desiring, got to have more, whatever. Sabbath is not a day to go shopping, okay? Sabbath is a day to just stop. Stop working, stop worrying. Now, there's things you're going to do during the day, but you're going to declutter your day. 1 day a week, like Chick-fil-A figured this out, right? Do you know how many times I've driven to Chick-fil-A here on Sunday after church? Because it is the perfect day to grab some Chick-fil-A. That rhymed. I didn't mean it to, but, you know, sometimes I flow like a rapper. What am I going to say? Anyway, so, no, but like after church, we go to Chick-fil-A. Oh, it's closed, right? And it used to be, and I shared this in 2 weeks ago, it used to be not just like the Bible Belt of America, the Bay Area. 1 generation ago, almost everything was shut down on Sundays. And people developed things like family times and Sunday drives, and they'd spend time together and whatever. And that doesn't happen anymore. But imagine if it did. Wouldn't it be refreshing just to our culture? Even if people aren't Christians or didn't believe in God even or whatever. But wouldn't it be a good thing if businesses had signs open 24/6? You know? Just there's a day we just stop. In fact, it's so important. Have you thought about this? The Sabbath is part of the 10 what? Commandments. Exodus 20. Let's take a look. Remember to observe. Like, you got to do this. This is a command from God. It's a good command. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. Got to get all your stuff. But the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest. And here's the important part. Dedicated to the Lord your God. So it doesn't mean you can't rake leaves on the Sabbath. But when you do it, maybe you're communing with the Lord. Does that make sense? It's like you take a walk, take your dog for a walk or whatever. But when you do it, be intentional about spending time with the Lord. Now, it's fascinating to me that when God created the earth, the universe, but the earth, he built in a rhythm. He built a tempo into it. There are things that are designed into the fabric of the way things ought to be. It just works that way. Does that make sense? You might not like it. You might resist it. It just is. So here's an example. In Leviticus, I think it's 25, God tells his people, look, you farmers, right, which most of them were, 6 seasons you can plant and harvest. But on that 7th year, you cannot plant and you cannot harvest a field. Now, you can do it another field on that 7th year, but not that one. That land, the land, listen, needs to rest. If dirt needs to rest, so do you and I. And actually, this is a farming principle today, that you cannot constantly be using and abusing. You can overuse it to your detriment. France actually at one point tried moving to a 10-day work week where they would work 10 days because they wanted to increase productivity. Work 10 days straight before you had some time off. And you know what happened? It decreased productivity. It increased anxiety. The economy crashed and suicide rates soared. It's very fascinating. Seventh-day Adventists, for instance, who are big on keeping the Sabbath, right? One doctor did a study, and his findings were that practicing Seventh-day Adventists, they live as much as 10 years longer than the average American. 10 years longer. Just by taking a day to rest. This is, when we say it's a life-giving principle, I mean even physically. You can say, oh, I don't like that, that's dumb, that's whatever. It just is the way it is. And research shows that your productivity goes down, especially after about working 50 hours a week. Anything after that, productivity usually goes down. Now, there might be a week or two you're extra busy and whatever, but over time, it goes down. You know why? What happens when you're overworked? You get tired. And when you're tired, you make better decisions in general or worse decisions? Worse. Do you make more mistakes or less mistakes? Yeah, and then now you got to spend your time fixing all these things. And it's like, why did I do that? And I shouldn't have done that. And why did I hire them? Now I got to whatever. And it's all this stuff because you're going too fast. Speed isn't everything. And in fact, I love this quote by H.H. Farmer, which great last name, Farmer. Says this: if you go against the grain of the universe, you get splinters. So you can say, oh, the Sabbath, that's Old Testament law, whatever, that doesn't apply. I'm telling you, God gives us commands for our good. There's a reason, always a reason, even if we don't like it, even if we don't understand it, to rest is good. And it says, but did you catch the part that says, by keeping it holy? In other religions, if you want to meet with God, you go to a place. But in our faith, if you want to meet with God, you set aside time. It's less about a place, and it's more about space in terms of time allotted to slow down and enjoy God's presence. And by the way, make it enjoyable. Make your Sabbath time enjoyable. And maybe you're like, I can't do a full day. Okay, could you do 3 hours? What if you just started somewhere? Again, not expecting you to do 1,575 push-ups in an hour. But I bet you you could work up to 10. You could work up to 20 or whatever, metaphorically. And so just practice that. So in the 10 Commandments, the only commandment that is given a reason why, an explanation, is this commandment. And what the Lord does is he goes back to the Genesis account of creation. Look at verse 11. He says, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the 7th day, what does it say? He rested. Who's the he? Okay, he stopped. By the way, Sabbath means, or Shabbat, it means two things. It means to stop and it means to delight or to enjoy. And I love those two definitions because that's what we ought to do. But even God rested. That's why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, set it apart as holy. This is what he did. And in creating creation, in his image, and even us, it's woven into the fabric of reality, right? And so if you're like the kind of person, I'm a type A kind of person, Joel, you don't understand, I'm a driver, I like to get things done. God rested. Do you understand? But I'm kind of a big deal. I got a lot of responsibilities. God, the one who holds atoms together, rested, okay? But I've got, all these kinds of things. I'm trying to get ahead. God rested. If God stopped and enjoyed, which he does in the Genesis account, he looked at everything he made and he said something. He said, it's very good. He delighted in his creation, and we ought to delight in him and in what he's created. See, God knows more than we know, and so out of his love, he restricts, he prohibits, he limits us. And isn't that what Jesus says in Mark 2? It says this, the Sabbath was made for man and woman, for people, not people for the Sabbath. It's not like, oh, you got to do this because, no, it's a gift. It's a gift, don't you see? It's a gift from God given to us because he loves us, right? Okay, let's go to the last one here, is the practice of, so we've talked about solitude, silence, and then the Sabbath, and then this last one is simplicity. I won't spend much time here, but because we've talked about this, but Jesus says this in Matthew 6 during the Sermon on the Mount. He says, therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life, what you'll eat or drink, or about your body, like those dudes prancing, as they run or whatever, what you will wear. Okay, these are the things we worry about, by the way. But is not life, like true life, more? Isn't it more than food, and the body more than clothes? Right? See, 90% of Americans a little over a century ago were farmers. And today about 2% of Americans are in agriculture in some way, in farming and whatever. But the point is that it was hard work as a farmer back then, but it was also a lot simpler in terms of you knew what you were supposed to do and you did it well. Right? Then we have industrialization, then we have urbanization, then we have now consumerism. And we are fed this lie by advertisers. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to sell us, literally. They're trying to sell us something. It's propaganda in a sense, and I get it. We got to spend. It's good for the economy, all that good stuff. I'm just telling you, it wouldn't hurt some of us to just live a little bit more of a simple life. Do we actually need that? By the way, when Jesus said that, he said that 2,000 years ago. Think about that. He's like, what are you worried about? What you eat and drink and what you wear and all these kinds of things, right? And there's probably some guy listening to him go like, man, I just bought my third tunic. I just need two. I need one to wear, one to wash and whatever. And I got the third because I'm so greedy. And he felt guilt and shame, Meanwhile, we open up our closets, all the stuff pours out. Did you know that what do they call the storage units? Those extra storage units where we put all of our stuff that doesn't fit in our house or our second house, we call it a garage. And then our third house is a storage unit. It's a $50 billion industry every single year, right? And the truth is, I'm not anti-storage units, or anything like that. I'm just saying the truth is most people don't even know what's in there, really. They almost never do it. Friends, your life is shorter than you think. Give stuff away. If it's broken and busted, throw it away. We can live a more minimalistic life. The world pitches us this constantly. More is happier. No. Scripture says more of God, to know him, to be with him is more joy, which is what Jesus says this in Luke 12. He says, watch out, like careful here. And I love that he said this 2,000 years ago. He's talking to people who have, compared to us, very little. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Here's why. Real life doesn't consist in an abundance of possessions. And that's a good word for us, abundance. We live in a culture that is abundant and we think we always need more. What if we didn't? Wouldn't that be freeing, actually? What if we actually were convinced that we have enough? It's not to say we can't get a new pair of shoes. It's not to say we can't whatever, but we just dialed it back some because we didn't believe the lie that life consists in the abundance of our possessions. Instead, we actually believe Jesus. He says, be careful of that.